best areas to invest in Pittsburgh right now. Where are you finding deals in Pittsburgh? If you would have started all over again, curious, would you have done anything differently? Or do you think that that is like the path of progress that most investors kind of have to go to get there to build wealth? Yeah, that's gold. The gold there is the creative financing. I feel like most people can't think outside of the box. Maybe that's what makes you successful. And why?
Yeah, just because it's cheap doesn't make it a good deal.
Yeah. And going back, I mean, what would you tell like a newer investor? Like, how would they avoid that same situation? How would they avoid breaking even or losing? Because breaking even is losing.
We brought on a dumpster company because that was something we always used. We went out and bought this company, and that's been great. So I'm like, okay, do we buy more rentals or do we buy more businesses, like service-based businesses? Because these cash flow a lot better than rentals. You know what I mean? It's like that shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is our bread and butter. This has got us here so far. But look at, there's this opportunity here.
Hey investors, Dave Hathaway, welcome back to the channel. We have an amazing interview with Travis Sterner. He is a local Pittsburgh real estate investor. By the end of the video, you're going to know how he scaled an over 80 unit rental portfolio, the best places to invest in Pittsburgh, where he finds the best deals, and what's working today for real estate strategies and investing in Pittsburgh. So with that, Travis has been investing for 8 years. Again, he has an 80+ unit rental portfolio, mainly focused on residential, but also has commercial units as well as short-term rentals. And he also does some JVing, private money, partnerships with other investors that are looking to get involved in rental properties. Welcome, Travis. How you doing?
Thank you.
I always like to start off with kind of how you got started in real estate investing. What attracted you to the space?
So my backstory is I went to school for engineering, civil engineering. I was good with math. So I thought, obviously, I'd be good at engineering. Graduated, got a job. Actually ended up dropping out of school a little bit early, just went straight to work. Really grew to hate the profession, just off fact of a management standpoint, being overworked, underappreciated, whatever. Went and found, my whole idea was financial freedom. Found Dave Ramsey. Through Dave Ramsey, got on to reading other books, found Bigger Pockets. Really clicked just because of my construction background, working in that area before. So I'm like, this is something I could do. Really fell in love with Brandon Turner's story. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad, typical, read that book, it's over. Got engaged. So I was working, but also doing the real estate thing on the side, building up a portfolio because I wanted to leave the field. I wanted that key way out, and eventually built it up all the way to where I had, I call it stage one financial freedom, where the money coming in was, more than all my bills. And then really the catalyst for me jumping in full time was COVID. Our budget in PA construction was basically shut down indefinitely. So they're like, you could take an 8-month layoff. And I'm like, yeah, this is the writing on the wall. So bowed out with that and went private ever since, and it's been great. It's been a ride.
And so you were in construction. Were you a project manager or GC? What were you doing in construction?
Project manager. Yeah. So I was project engineer, then project manager, which is a great position to have. It's high stress. I was 26, running $10 to $12 million worth of state projects. So that's the goal when you're in college. And it's a good figure, 6-figure income. It's a good job. The stress levels that came with that, though, was in most companies, they don't last. There's a high turnover rate for that job just because of the stress. And also they change companies a lot because you're high on payroll. They need you while the season is going, but they don't need you the off season or maybe the next year. So these guys change companies quite a lot. The career itself, the career path, once I realized the whole picture of it, I didn't love it.
Yeah. And your takeaways from the construction field, did you learn any like processes there that carried over that helped you in, doing the rehabs, investing, in Pittsburgh?
Definitely in project management and managing contractors and people, really. I mean, it is a people business. Almost every business I'd say is a people business, but being able to see the bird's eye view of projects and keep the ball rolling, multiple different areas, that really took that away. I wouldn't say I would go back and change it. It really got me to where I am today. But I learned to juggle, keep a lot of balls in the air, juggling many different projects and just that kind of thing.
Talk to me about the first couple properties. What did that look like? How did you purchase those?
Okay. So my first rental property, other than a house I lived in. So I inadvertently got into real estate investing. The very first one, like real estate purchase, was a place that I could live in, was a foreclosure. Got that with friends and family money, fixed it up just with simple stuff. I mean, easy numbers. I think it was $40,000. It was not a big house. It was very small. fixed it up for just with myself fixed it up for, I'd say less than $5,000.
Where is that located at?
That was Westmoreland County, Pittsburgh.
Okay, cool.
About a half hour out, 45 minutes outside of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And then when I went to sell that place, maybe a year and a half to 2 years later, we put it on the market for, I think, 85 and ended up going for 90 something because of a bidding war. Two people really wanted it. And that just blew my mind because what I ended up walking away with was more than I made all last year. And I was like, wow, I'm doing something wrong here.
And that one, did you purchase straight cash?
Yeah. So we borrowed friends and family money, lived in it, paid them back from the proceeds when we sold.
Gotcha. And was it like an MLS purchase? Was it an auction purchase?
Foreclosure. So I think it was on the MLS.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you ended up taking that money into another primary, really. And I still own that primary today. But my first true investment property was off of Facebook Marketplace, and it was $18,000. It was the cheapest house ever. These numbers don't even sound realistic nowadays. Yeah. And the guy was super familiar with owner finance. He's the one that pitched it to me. He's like, yeah, why don't you just give me some down, pay the rest on monthly? And I gave him $5,000 down. It was like the scariest check I've ever written in my life. And I would never think twice about doing an owner finance deal now. I do them all the time. And I still have that house today. And that house has been refinanced, rented again, been paid off. I think the bank says it's worth about $115 now. And it's been rented for about $900 for the last 7 years.
Has it had turnover or anything?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's been, I think, five or six different tenancies in there.
Gotcha. But $900 return monthly.
The cash on cash is just, I don't know, it's infinite at this point. Yeah, it's just crazy.
No, that's awesome. So you started out purchasing. Did you end up progressing to a different model other than like just purchasing cash for each property and then kind of refinancing? Yes. Did it eventually?
Because I quickly ran out. So after that one, the next one after that, we did a cash deal. And then we were done. We were dead in the water. So when I say we, it's me and my brother that do this portfolio. But once that was it, it was like we're stuck. So we started getting commercial bank financing through local banks. We used actually several different local banks, really. And the first one that it was, I'd say there were like 10 branches or less, like small local banks. And they were giving us like 5 20-year ARM commercial rate mortgages. And we wrote a bunch of those. We just kept writing them. They would pencil in if the deal made sense. Their underwriting was pretty quick, and that was our next indefinite like. And what really was the catalyst to scaling quickly was their ability to cross collateralize. So those early properties that were bought cash or seller financing, where there was no debt on the books per se, they were free and clear. I would put up that property for collateral instead of a down payment for the bank. So house A will buy house C, house B will buy house D, and continue in that way. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Do you ever worry that cross collateralization, like for selling? Do you still do that today? If you fast forward all the way up to today, are you still cross collateralizing properties? We do, not ones that we don't plan on keeping, because yes, the bank will put a mortgage on there for, like, if you're putting this house up for 50 and say it's worth 100, they will put a mortgage on there. They are owed that 50. So if you sell it, you still owe them that 50, or the house that you bought with using that as collateral has to appreciate past the 50 or your 20% mark or whatever you were using as collateral. And that you have to kind of keep an eye on, because you're continuously churning the properties. The bank's not going to go out there and say, okay, this one's appreciated, so now we can drop the mortgage on this one. That's, the onus falls on you to make sure that, you know, you're constantly recycling that money. Yeah. And also that you're constantly getting a good deal, right? I mean, the bank, we always think about like the banks and hard money lenders. The deal always has to pencil out. The property always has to pencil out, or cash flow, or else the bank's not gonna. It does. And the risky part about the cross collateralization piece is you're now risking 2 properties. If this deal fails, you could lose 2 instead of 1. So it's not without risk. Yeah. And you said fast forward today, this is kind of the same method that you're still using today, or do you use like a different DSCR method or something different today on rental properties? So today we're using more DSCR, and we're also buying with credit line and then refinancing DSCR. Bank lending, and I wouldn't say it's quite dried up, but it's the institutional money in our area is kind of nervous for real estate investment right now. So it's still, whenever the market shifts, and I think it's shifting again right now, the institutional money is like just kind of scared to, unless it's a really good deal. So the DCNR loans, those guys are still going. So we're going with those, but we have big lines of credit now based on some of this paid off properties that we already have. So we're buying essentially cash. fixing up, and then refinancing DSCR loans.
Gotcha. Oh, you're buying on that line of credit and then just paying.
Yeah.
No,
Which is essentially hard money, because we'll buy with hard money too, but it's like our own hard money.
Yeah. I mean, usually it's a little bit less and you're paying a little bit less fees, right? You're not having to pay all those.
Yeah, it's like prime +2, prime +1, that kind of thing. And that is also with local banks too. And it's faster. So like your underwriting at local banks may not be the quickest turnaround, but if you got some paid off properties and you can put, say, a line of credit on those properties, and now you can essentially be your own hard money, well, there is no underwriting process. Like that's just, money that you can use and recycle.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like a half Dave Ramsey strategy, half non. Dave Ramsey's a big no debt guy for the audience that might not have never heard of him. He's a big, like, you don't want to have any debt at all, but this is like internal debt of yourself. If you're, pulling from your own property. I guess you're pulling and creating debt from a bank.
Yeah.
And you said prime +2. So on your last, just out of curiosity, on one of your last purchases, what did that line of credit, what did that look like? Is that like 7%?
On the last one we did, it was 8.5.
8.5. Okay.
Which isn't bad.
So still lower. I mean, but that's around the same as a DSCR. I mean, maybe DSCR is a little bit less, but I mean, that's a great strategy, actually.
Yeah.
And then the local bank that you use, do you mind giving them a plug?
Yeah. So that recent one was First Summit Bank, but we use a lot of different banks. I mean, I'd say we're probably up to a dozen different banks that we're keeping active relationships with. We may not have lending at each one, but we want relationships with a lot of them, because we've hit to where we've outgrown a couple, just because like we have so much debt on their books. So like, they now
can't loan to you anymore.
Right. They'll not take your loan to the board, and it'll get dropped or voted against just because of the amount of debt you now have at this bank. Even though everything's serviced and you've never missed a payment, you just now look high risk. So that way, now you got to go to another bank and start the relationship over again. Yeah.
I mean, it's the local banks only want a borrower to have a certain percentage of debt on their books. So if you get over like 0.5 or 1% of debt on their books, they're no longer going to loan to you. And that's why you're shopping around for different ones.
And I'd say here, that's right around that $1 million mark. If you get $1 million in debt in a local bank around here, it depends too a lot on your business and the volume you're doing. But for like a small company, that's probably near your threshold of, you should branch out to another bank.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I'm always a huge proponent of having, at least 2 banks, just because you never know. Banks can just all of a sudden say, hey, we're no longer going to do business with you. We're going to shut down your business accounts. I mean, it's not unheard of. It's happened. And so it's always good to not have to scramble when that happens. And that you always have like, hey, I know this bank, I know how it works. It's not my like primary one, but it's always good just to have that secondary one. You don't even really have to have that much money over there.
No, it's good, I think, to know all the commercial lenders in your local business area, I think.
Yeah, it's a great
tip. You could really, I forgot what I was going to say about that. But yeah, you could really put too many eggs in one basket, go into one bank continuously, because out of no fault of your own, they could just vote that year that we want less money in small multifamily real estate. And that's what you do. And then that's it. Now you're denied on your loans. And you got to start blank at another bank instead of you have a warm relationship at this other bank and it's already good and you've been working on it. That's an easier transition.
No, it's a great tip. Why, Travis, why did you invest in Pittsburgh? Why Pittsburgh?
Just because I live here and I can keep an eye on them and I can work on these houses. We started just working on them ourselves, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because then you get used to doing everything yourself and you got to pull yourself out of the company eventually.
Yeah. I mean, the GC if you're GCing your projects, it's definitely a super important role, but it's also super involved. It has to be an A player. You can't plug in a
leader and the bottleneck.
Yeah. And so you live in Pittsburgh and you decided, hey, I'm going to invest where I live because I got a pulse. I know what's going on here. I'm tapped into the market. Yeah. So Pittsburgh's kind of your superpower. Where are you finding deals in Pittsburgh?
So originally it was mostly off market. It was like Facebook Marketplace used to be a gold mine. That was back in 2018 when no one wanted these junky houses.
18,000. It sounds like it was a gold mine.
Yeah. So we were killing it on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, the penny pinchers or the paper ads, which is basically your newspaper, your classifieds.
Okay.
We were on there, and then some MLS. I mean, you could buy 1% deals just right off the MLS at that point in time, 1.5. Like there was just not as big a demand. There was a bigger supply then too. So like houses that need a lot of work would just typically sit and sit and sit and sit. And because we didn't have a lot of funds, we would just buy in rougher areas and buy for cash, fix them up. They'd be worth more. And then we would refinance more or collateralize more out and then buy in better areas.
Yeah. Top grading your properties. I feel like that's a trend for a lot of people, especially when you have deal with a bunch of stress or a bunch of tension in like a rougher area. And you're like, wow, that was a lot of work for like $10,000. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah. And then you got to like early on, I bought a true crack house for $7,000. And I'm like, how can you lose on $7,000? Like this guy was probably going to jail the next week and he needed funds.
Yeah.
And all kinds of drug paraphernalia in the house, all this and I did lose on that house. It was in a bad area. Yeah. I put a bunch of money into it. Nobody wanted it. It wasn't, I didn't take the time. It was close to what areas I've invested in. It was the next county over, but at almost an hour away, it's a completely different market. And I got stung there and I ended up fixing it up enough. And then I seller financed to a girl who has the house today. So I'd say I broke even, but I learned an immense amount. Like, you could get a deal for free and it's still too expensive.
Yeah. It's a great point. So I often think about like every house has a price, right?
Yes.
And every house does have a price. Some houses are negative in price.
Yeah.
You actually can't pay me $1,000 to take deed of that property
100%.
Because it's whether it's construction, whether it's drugs, whether it's whatever. And a lot of people feel like investors, you don't know until you know, right? You don't know that $7,000 crack house, that you can't rent it out, that you have to evict all the people that go in there, that even if you do rent it out, your tenants are like, hey, I didn't realize this was a crack house. I'm out of here. And so you get stuck in this thing, and turnover is, I always think that turnover is like the biggest killer of like returns. And if you have, a property that turns over yearly, you're basically not making money. You're just, And so I feel like people, they get stuck in that opportunity. Hey, this is like such a good deal. And they don't zoom out. And
especially you're going to deal with turnover if you're buying in places no one wants to live. Like, it's just going to be, that was one of them things I had to learn the hard way. Like, just because it's cheap doesn't make it a good deal. Yeah.
And going back, I mean, what would you tell like a newer investor? Like, how would they avoid that same situation? How would they avoid breaking even or losing? Because breaking even is losing. You're losing a lot of time.
I would tell them like some of the best deals you do in a year, and this is like consistent throughout the career, are the ones some of the best deals you can do in a year are the ones you say no to. So the ones that don't take like all of your time and all of your money, end up being money pits and all that kind of stuff. Like, some of the best deals you can do in a year are the ones you say no to, and really don't look just because you can afford it doesn't mean it's a go.
But how do you realize which ones you need to say no to? Like, is there any like pointers that you could?
I would say the area. At that point in time, I wasn't as familiar with the area as I should have been, and done my research properly to really vet like, what's my ARV going to be? What's my rent? Who's going to be my renter? What industry is in that area? Well, that's a big one. That is going to want to rent my place there. Where do they work? That kind of thing. Where do they have? Where's the what's the biggest employer nearby? What are the comps? Like, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you kind of you feel like maybe you jumped without doing like too much due diligence and being like, man, this is a really good deal. I got to jump on it.
Yes. And I just said,
Yeah, I feel like in like 2018, 2020, 2021, all of it was like, you have to purchase a deal like immediately. There is no waiting around.
Yes.
Or somebody else is going to purchase it. And so a lot of times you're kind of skipping due diligence. You're just saying, hey, I'm going to take a risk, whether it's sight unseen on the property. Some investors have their ways of getting in properties that are sight unseen. Yeah. I can't say that I've never done that before in my life for a property, but sometimes we skip due diligence. I'm a big proponent of like, you have to go see the property, or you have to have somebody that you trust go set foot in the property if at all possible. Like, if it can happen. And I've only been burned a couple times. And those times are when I didn't set foot in the property, just because a lot of stuff you can't see in photos, whether it's like a slanted floor that you're like, well, this would obvious if somebody would have stepped in here that had said this whole house is crooked. that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And usually the person taking the pictures is the person that wants to sell it. So they're going to take the pictures the best possible ways. Like, you know, it's like when you're renting an apartment, you're going to take the wide angle photos and make it look a lot bigger.
Yeah, I agree. And so where are you finding your deals like today? Like, are you still finding them off market, the majority of your deals? Are you finding it through Facebook groups, or or you purchasing off MLS?
Today, ours are mostly like referrals and MLS. And on MLS, we're doing like a lot of direct to agent outreach on stuff that's been sitting on the MLS a while, or we're just working with our agent and jumping on stuff that is new to market, that kind of thing.
Yeah, love it.
And referrals. I'd say one of my biggest mistakes early on is not jumping into local networking soon enough and not looking for groups to be in where I could learn and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love everything you said there. I feel like a lot of times investors get stuck in this. It's on MLS, so it's not a deal. And they get really get stuck in that thing. I've had people that talk to me and they're like, Dave, this is like a good, like the property looks good. It's not a deal. I'm like, the look of a property doesn't have anything to do with like if it's a good deal or not. Like, what are the numbers? And I feel like people just really get stuck in their own head about that. At least in my experience with people chatting with me, they get really stuck in there of this isn't a good deal because it's in good shape.
Oh, absolutely. I've even done that where I've referred deals to, like, say, younger investor or whatever, newer investor, and they've come to me like, oh, I'm looking for this, and this deal. I'll shoot them one on the MLS. I'm like, oh, I'm not interested because it's listed. Like, why? Like, like, that makes sense. A deal's a deal no matter where it came from.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you said that. It's always tough saying that where I'm like, man, am I giving away my like good advice? I purchase a lot of properties off MLS.
You do. And same as when you're selling, you know what I mean? Like that's especially when you're a smaller operator, like that's your biggest dispo market. Everyone's looking, and especially with like, we do a lot of creative finance, like these people on the MLS have already put their hand up and said, I want to sell. So there it is, and if you have to pay an agent commission to get a creative finance deal, that's money well spent.
And when you're talking about if you're talking about creative financing, what kind of creative financing are you most doing in these? Like, what are you pitching to the owners?
So we're pitching to the owners. We'll give you your price if you give us our terms. Okay. So we closed one like 2 weeks ago. It was an on-market MLS deal. Rough numbers. It was $100,000 they wanted for this house, and I would have bought it as a rental for say $70,000, right? Okay. So we offered them $100,000 on a 20-year note at no interest. And they countered back. Well, at first they took that deal actually, and I would pay their commissions. I would pay their agent commissions. They took that deal, and then their accountant said that they need to show interest or they're getting, they're losing out on deductions. So they actually came back to me with a better deal. They said, how about we do it for 70? It was either 70, 75 at 5% interest. And same term, which ended up being less money to close and less money overall. So yeah, I was like, yeah, done, deal. And I went there and I paid, and I let their agent take both side commission. So she was happy, and we closed at a local title company, and it was easy.
And so you pay interest directly to that
old
owner.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that owner basically holds the note, and you just cut out checks directly to the owner.
We just pay them monthly, and the house was turnkey, and we put it up. So our payment to them is $650 roughly, and we put it up on we rented it for $1,250.
$1,250, dude. That's gold right there.
Yeah. So like that was from like just a cold agent outreach, just texting agents.
Yeah, that's gold. The gold there is the creative financing. I feel like most people can't think outside of the box. Maybe that's what makes you successful and why you have
like this year. I always have like a word for the year, and this one is like consistently creative. Like just make more offers.
Yeah, and I love this philosophy of like negotiating, where a lot of people think it's negotiating like on different sides of the table instead of like getting on the same side of the table and being like, hey, this can work for both of us. You're looking for price.
Yeah,
you got to meet me here. And it's not like you're getting a bad deal or I'm getting a bad deal. It's like,
Right.
we're going to make something work together on one side of the table. I love that you did that. I love that you said that.
Absolutely. Because if you took that same deal at a price that I would have bought it, say like between $50,000 and $60,000, and then you add commercial rates of what they are plus closing costs, now that deal is not nearly as good. Like, it still probably would have penciled, but not nearly as good.
Yeah, I love that. And what location is that? Where's that property? Like, what area
Westmoreland
code?
County. Yeah. So like Pittsburgh itself, Pittsburgh proper is in Allegheny County. We're
Okay.
Westmoreland County, which is just, I'd say, like outskirts, suburbs kind of area.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And what strategies right now are working for real estate investing in Pittsburgh?
So I like Burr.
Okay.
That's basically what built my portfolio is Burr, except on the refinance, it was cross collateralized instead of pulling actual funds out. Now it like flipping's nice again, just because of the demand, and buy and hold where you can find it on Creative.
Gotcha. And then for your normal deals, when we talk about like a buy box, do you have a specific buy box that you are targeting?
So I'm looking for a price per unit under $50,000. That doesn't need a tremendous amount of work. I like to be all in price per unit. So on a duplex, that would be 100,000. On a triplex, it'd be 150,000. Top line, I'm looking, actually ideally closer to 30 if I can find that. That's sometimes really hard to find, but that's my buy box. And then it would be in my county, in Westmoreland area, and it's also closer to the metro employers.
Yeah.
So I have actually maps in my office. So I take print out a big county map, and I'll put pins on like who's the top employers for this, the top 5, right? And like the hospital's one, the steel company's another, this, whatever. And like anything around those pins is going to rent really easy, like Amazon. And it just came in. So like, they have 800 employees. So like, it's easy to rent now in this area because Amazon is here. So those ones are, those are priority. You can get more rentals there. There's more demand there, that kind of thing.
And so you are you like proximity purchasing to those employment areas? Do you have like a 1 mile radius that you're kind of like, hey, I'm purchasing within all these?
Our county is big, so it's probably more like 5 to 10 miles, but yeah, if I can, yes.
Okay.
So we'll constantly see areas, like a lot of times when I was building early on, there's a lot of these like C or D neighborhoods that have lots of turnover houses, and you can buy big portfolios really cheap there. But we don't want to go in those areas anymore because there's no employers, you're commuting, there's a rough, that kind of stuff. We'd rather pay a little more and go to the areas that people are really competing to live in.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And top grading, definitely. If you would have started all over again, curious, would you have done anything differently? Or do you think that is like the path of progress that most investors kind of have to go to get there to build wealth in those lower grade areas to get to?
Not really. I would have probably swung for nicer deals sooner. I think we played in the rough areas longer than we really had to. Yeah. I was always nervous on being over leveraged. So I would tend to keep my portfolio, and it's even still kind of like this, under 70%, and sometimes around 50% total leverage, which for some people might sound high, or for some people that might sound extremely low. But to me, that was like, I could go belly up and still keep half.
Yeah. Hey, everybody's got their comfort zone. I mean, I think it's important to know that we all have different personalities and different characters. Yeah. And you kind of play the game of investing to your personality. Some people 100%. Are like, hey, I just don't want debt, and that makes you sleep good at night. And there's no perfect way to invest, right? Some people might have most of their properties paid off, and they only have a 10-unit portfolio. That could be awesome. That could just be their personality type. And some people are like, hey, I'm leveraging 90% LTV, and I'm going to have a 300-unit portfolio. It's less risk, and that's their personality. And so as an investor, you just need to figure out what works for you, and that there's no perfect way. Just there is different ways that.
Oh, absolutely. And I tell people that are getting into this, I'm like, really just start listening to as many stories as you can and find the ones that really resonate with you. Like, okay, I like that one. Or I don't like that one. I don't like how he did it. Or you see people's outcomes, because it's hard for me to tell somebody else what they should do because I don't know what they want.
Yeah. No, I love that. Going back to your $50K per unit, I just want to dig into that a little bit more. What's the how did you come up with that number? And is that because you get a certain amount of cash flow per unit? Is that
so at a 50K per unit? That's roughly you're at a 2%, a 1.5 to 2% rule.
okay?
Anything higher than that, you go down. Obviously your cash goes down, your cash flow goes down, and that's like that's after repairs and everything, and like updates and whatnot. But to me, in a nutshell, in good areas, that makes a good deal or a bad deal. Now, obviously, sometimes there's places just with like really bad layouts, and that that's an outlier. But typically, that's our buy box. If we can get it, yeah.
Could you share like specific numbers on just like a recent property that you purchased or was this one that we talked about that Creative Finance, was that like one that you just recently did?
Yeah, so that'd be a little higher. That would be definitely a little higher than our buy box. But because on the single families, that's my buy box on the multis. On the single families, I'm willing to stretch out a little bit just because the appreciation is going to kind of run faster than like a duplex or a triplex or a small multifamily. So on single families, I'll probably up to 75 to 80 on a per unit purchase. But yeah, like I'll say on a duplex, I'm looking for 80 grand on a duplex.
Is there one that you can think of recently that's like, hey, I purchased it for 80, and just talk about the numbers really quick? Like,
yeah. I'm trying to think of it. We actually got one under contract right now. I bought in from this seller before. It's a 5-unit property at $165,000, and we're going to buy that on line of credit, and then we're going to keep it for, I think it's 1 billing cycle until I can refinance on a DSCR loan, and then immediately try to pull the majority of that back out again.
Gotcha. And then you're going to rent those units out for.
So those ones are actually already rented. They're roughly $600 each.
It's like $3,000.
Yeah. So it is a little under market rent right now for small units. So there's room to grow cash flow there as well. And that was just a referral deal that I bought from this owner before. He knows me. He knows it'll be an easy transaction. He cares about his tenants, so going and not being displaced.
Yeah, no, I love that. You're building relationships, super important. And then it also gets you're able to get better deals that way, because we like to deal with people that we really like. And even if we're getting like not as good of a deal, we've already know and trust the person.
Yeah.
We're just like, hey, I've already dealt with Travis before. I don't want to deal with anybody else. I already know what to expect.
It's going to be a simple close. Like, there's another one coming to mind because we just re-renovated one of the units, but there was an agent that we knew. A friend of hers came, basically would have been a pocket listing, but it never made it that far. Came to her, be like, hey, do you know any investors that might want my triplex? That he lived right beside it. It was across the street. He built half of this thing. And like, oh yeah, Travis will probably want it. He's like, what do you want for it? He wanted 90 grand. I'm like, done. Got debt on it, and I still own that thing today.
Yeah, that's awesome. For that 5-unit property, after like all your expenses, I would assume for that, are utilities separate?
So they're paying their own electric and gas. Then the owner pays water, sewer, trash.
Okay.
Kind of typical around here.
What do you think after you refinance that property? And do you think I would assume you'd be able to just refinance the all 165, your purchase.
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah, I'm trying to DCR the whole thing out 30 years, and it should cash flow a little less than $1,000 a month.
That's crazy. I mean, yeah, that's amazing. That's great, dude.
And be worth more on day one. I mean, the numbers for small multifamilies are so strange for what they've been trading here, because there's very few investment buildings even for sale in the county anymore. So like, we're getting people from out of state coming in and buying like high prices. That's kind of inflating up. So it's odd now, but I mean, which is good, I guess, if you own it, but it's kind of bad if you're trying to buy into it now, because there's a lot of more eyeballs on our area where there never used to be before.
Yeah. I mean, it's good for refinances, right?
It is.
If people are purchasing for high prices, that means you're going to be able to refinance for more. That means if you go to sell, you're going to have better comps in the area.
Absolutely. Yeah. So our comps are actually boosting. So like, that one is probably worth well into the 200s day one.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And if the DSCR lets you pull everything out, you're getting infinite cash flow because you have no cash in the deal.
Yeah. That 30-year fixed product is really nice. Like, super nice.
Yeah. That's awesome. Let's talk about, because you briefly hit it, but I want to talk about the best areas to invest in Pittsburgh right now. If you're like directing an investor, where are you directing?
I can't speak so much for in the city. since I don't deal with there. We are more like the outskirts.
Okay.
So the areas that we're in and that we like are, I'm in Mount Pleasant. I love Mount Pleasant, Greensburg, Irwin, Ligonier, Derry, Latrobe, all those little towns, cities, those kind of areas. It's close enough to the city that you could live here and commute in, but it's far enough away to be considered, country living, I guess, if that's what you will.
Yeah. And are those all in Westmoreland County?
Yeah, those are all in our county. We'll dabble a little bit into Allegheny. We'll go in a few neighborhoods like McKeesport, say Monroeville, Murraysville, those kind of areas. But we're not looking to keep, just because it gets kind of far away from us and for our techs to go out there and maintenance guys and whatnot. So if we were to do something there, it would just be to sell.
Thank you for sharing all those. Is there any places in the city that you think people like? Is there a reason that you don't invest necessarily directly in the city, or is it just proximity that it's too far, just like you said, farther for the techs?
Yeah, a big part of it's proximity. A lot of it is cost too. You tend to go up. I mean, cost on both, like the tire cost per square foot, but you can also rent cost per square foot. But our base is out here, and like the landlord tenancy magistrates are very friendly out here for the most part. Whereas when you get into the city, you get a little rougher areas. So like they really leave you alone out here.
Gotcha. It's just like harder to evict tenants in the city. Maybe it takes longer. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, red tape. Your taxes are higher. Your property stuff goes up. Just different regulations, that kind of things. You need to be like a licensed plumber for that county. You need to do plumbing in that county, whereas you don't in this county. Stuff's just easier, and it's proximity. I'd say that's the biggest one. It's just we're here, we're right here.
Yeah, it's a superpower. Just out of curiosity, for where you're investing, let's say it's like $100,000 property. What does insurance normally look like for your properties? Like, how much is that costing per year?
So for years, it was always like 1%. So that'd be like $1,000 a year. Yeah. Now that's probably like 1.2, 1.3. It's going up, and it's steadily going up. And you would expect that for these areas like Florida and California, when they raise in prices out there, that affects us here.
Yeah.
It all goes up.
And then so you're talking about like $1,200 in insurance. And what's a normally like property taxes in Westmoreland?
Property taxes are it differs by little boroughs. So some are a little higher than some are a little lower. I would say you're right around the same, actually, that 1% or a little lower.
Okay. Yeah. So right around 1,000.
Yeah. Cool.
It's always good for relative purposes. Sometimes people for our audience kind of are interested all over the place. And I analyze different property each week in a different market. And it's always like mind blowing differences. Like, wow, yeah. It's like crazy some areas where,
and it's so hard to take what some person's doing over here and try to replicate that. It's almost impossible. Like real estate's so neighborhood by neighborhood.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I actually think the superpower is being local. I think local investors, and I think investors should really understand this, that if you're local, you have an edge over like an institutional investor.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether it's building a local team, the contractors, your rehab's going to be cheaper. It can be smoother. And you have all these like knowing block by block areas. I don't know if around there it's block by block, but a lot of times you need to know what's block by block. In certain areas that I invest in, absolutely, it'll be like $150,000 on one side of the street, and the other side of the street's like $400,000.
Oh, Pittsburgh is very much like that. It's neighborhood by neighborhood, because Pittsburgh overall is a very small city. Yeah. And you'll have like I said, you'll have a lot of difference in a 3-block radius.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that. Do you manage your own portfolio, or do you have a third-party property manager?
So we manage ourselves. Yeah, we're really just building the company around what we have. So it was me doing that, and then now I brought on help, and we're actually continuing to bring on help, and we're building the company around. We're in-house management. Okay,
and what does that look like in-house? I know you work with your brother.
Yeah.
Do you have any hires? Do you have like a property manager that you hire? Do you use VAs?
We have not yet used VAs. It's tempting though. I do every year. It's like, oh man,
we can chat about that afterwards.
I'm
happy to share what I do with ours.
So it's me, my wife, my brother, one full-time guy, and a lot of other like subcontractors, if you will. Like most of our GC work is subbing with me taking the lead on it.
In the full-time position, is that a handyman? What's the full-time?
Handyman maintenance.
Huge. That's great. I love that you got a full-time guy running on property to property.
Yeah. At a certain point, it becomes, vendors are great when you're starting out, but once you're at a certain point, and I guess it really depends on different areas, but you're going to save a lot by bringing that in-house. Yeah. Same with management. Yeah, if you can bring management in-house, I mean, it gets to a certain point where your yearly management fees would be more than somebody's salary.
Yeah, I mean, where I struggled a bit, or where I had like an epiphany, I'll say, is I was trying to always do like third-party property management. I always thought that was going to be the best, especially if I was investing in different areas. And if you are investing in different areas, you might not really have a choice, because you're not going to build out a special team in Texas and then another special team in Florida and then another special team. And so you kind of have to hire specialists in those areas that are local. But what I struggle with is, for those third-party property managers, when I had this, so I do the same as you. So I self-manage our portfolio with a VA. And I found that when I was third-partying, I'd see like how much they were dispatching contractors out for. Like, I'd be like, all right, I got to let that go. People say, hey, you got to let it. And I was GCing our projects. So our rehabs, I was GCing. And I knew I couldn't give up that GC part, because a property manager wasn't going to be able to GC a project. Or if they were going to do it poorly. It was going to cost a ridiculous amount. And so I was already dealing with the contractors, and then I'd see their quotes come in, their invoices, and I was like, why are we paying $500 to replace a toilet? I was like, what is happening here? Right. And so I'd see all this money that I was losing, and I was like, I ended up starting to dispatch the contractors I was like, you just collect the checks, I'm going to dispatch. And it was like, I don't even know what they're doing. It's like, we're doing everything. And so I realized, like, hey, they don't really have a role, because I thought that I could, like, they would bring on some like great contractors, and I just found that I could never find somebody that had like rock star contractors. It was always me, like, building this list. I call it my contractor A team. I have like a big spreadsheet with all the different specialties. Yeah. And now that I mentioned it, I'll probably have people in the comments going, hey, can you send me that? Send me all your I don't know you. Send me all the contractors, the relationships that you built for free. I have people ask me that all the time. Usually they don't realize how much blood, sweat, and tears went into building those lists of going through so many bad contractors that it's really hard for an investor to just give away all those contractors. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Absolutely, especially on the good ones. The good ones are always busy. So, like, you're going to bring in some competition. They'll be all working on your house when I need you working on mine.
So with that whole, sorry, I probably went off on a huge tangent there, but with that whole thing, what's the most challenging part of investing for you right now?
Knowing what direction to dive into in the future, whether we want to go, because we never used to flip in the past. We used to keep everything. And I think if I was going to scale back a little bit and go play it again, I would probably do a little bit of both, because it's hard if you're building a rental portfolio with just like, say, W-2 active income, or you could build it with, like, say, flip income, that kind of thing too. So it's like the long way, I guess. I mean, you see a lot of these guys' stories is just building a rental portfolio from zero to up to whatever. So I might have taken some cards off the table, cashing some chips earlier to kind of maybe speed up the process or make it less of a grind. But yeah, knowing which direction to go into, which ones to keep, how exactly, I guess, reverse engineering what exactly we want the company to look like in 2-3 years. And then what's the actions today that we got to make it look like that? That's probably my biggest struggle.
Are you struggling more? I'm just trying to comprehend. Are you struggling more a little bit with like goal setting of where you want to be? Or is it just not knowing, like, hey, should I keep this property or should I flip this property? Like,
it's more like that. It's more like I can keep this one, or it could rent for this, or should I scale the net worth, or should I, cash this in right now and then put that money towards, the construction business that we have. We brought on a dumpster company because that was something we always used. We went out and bought this company, and that's been great. So I'm like, okay, do we buy more rentals or do we buy more businesses, like service-based businesses? Because these cash flow a lot better than rentals. You know what I mean? It's like that shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Okay, this is our bread and butter. This has got us here so far. But look at, there's this opportunity here. There's this, there's that thing. It's more, I guess, just focus and also really, you make the plan, then work the plan. But work the plan you made before changing gears too much.
Yeah, no, I love that. So you purchased basically a haul, like a dumpster company?
Yeah, like a roll-off dumpster company. It was a year, almost 2 years ago. And with another investor. So me and him, we just bought out all the equipment. And he would have given us the name and the LLC and all that kind of. We didn't want that. We just bought, it was a truck and 7 roll-off dumpsters. Brought it back to PA. We got it from Virginia. Rebranded it, put a new LLC on top of it. And that's, something we always use. A lot of investors do, especially if you do a lot of construction, is roll off dumpsters.
Yeah.
And it's made a world of difference because our companies are feeding into it. So the companies, it doesn't even really need to do too many outside sales. We keep it alive and then we sell off the difference too.
Yeah. And so you're finding that is more, I'm curious, you're finding that is like just as profitable, it's more profitable, it's less work.
Yeah, it was, I would say for a business, it was break even year 1, which is really good on a business. I mean, we'll be profitable year 2. On a rental, even a great deal, you're probably 2, 3, 4 years into it before you're actually net profit. You're just making back that initial investment for years until you're, in the green.
Yeah, you're talking about your down payment if you're using a down payment.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I'll share because I think this is valuable for the audience. I have a big spreadsheet that is all of our finances. That's got like all the different properties, all the different mortgages, all the different insurance policy numbers. So it's all like in one place. I think this is important. Most people don't do this. But when you deal with banks and financing, you might have this. You realize they ask questions where you're like, I don't know where my policy number is. Where the heck do I find that? So I just put it all on one spreadsheet.
That's good.
So I always know where it is. But on that spreadsheet, I added probably, 2 or 3 years ago, I think I was listening to another show and I heard people talk about return on equity. And so I added that category at the end of my spreadsheet. And so it automatically calculates it with, I'll put in I think I have rent in there so I can see what my rent roll is. Then I have what the mortgage payment is. I have the insurance. And so at the end, it's return on equity. And so I'll look down there and it will tell me how much, not cash on cash, my property's making, because then I keep how much I purchased the property for and then how much it was worth.
Right.
So it doesn't give me a cash on cash return. It gives me an actual how much, with the equity. I know I'm probably explaining this terrible. But this is for the value of the audience, all of my equity. So if I purchased a property and then it appreciated $100,000, I still have $100,000 in the deal. So my returns are going to go down minusculely. So I'm going to sell a property coming up here in June. I was going to sell it last summer, but my tenant was like, hey, can I stay another year? It's my daughter's senior year of high school. And since it's a human business and it's been a tenant that's been good to me, I said, yep. What's going to probably happen is the roof's going to start leaking and my HVAC unit's going to go out. But you've been a great tenant. You can stay in there. What ended up happening like a month later, she was like, my roof's leaking. I was like, oh, self-prophecy. But for that property, I think I have like $200,000 of equity. And when I look at my ROE, so I'm giving you a real life example. Look at my ROE. It's like 3.1%. And so if you can refinance that, pull it out. If I refinance it, it would not cash flow anymore. Right now it's cash flowing. And so I use that number to determine, hey, am I going to sell this property? Am I going to keep it?
Yeah.
So that's what I do. And I found that's been at least you can create some hard and fast rules like, hey, if it's under 5%, I'm getting rid of it, or depending. Right. But I found that has been very helpful. For me, at least, because I've probably 5 properties that I've highlighted where like, hey, when I think it's ripe, I'm going to sell it. I'll also share that I think that the best time to sell a property is after you own it for between 7 and 10 years.
I would say so. Yeah, you really
lifespan, especially if you've renovated it. So we do value add. But if you've renovated, then all your lifespan stuff starts like going, whether it's
Absolutely.
your HVAC, and so if you can sell the property before, not shoddily, or you're not trying to hide anything, but if you can sell before all that stuff starts, your profit is much higher, is what I found.
And I think it pays more because it harvesting, like equity harvesting. Like he has the same type of layout, and like when you have a stagnant property, like your return on equity, especially on we have paid off properties, like we have free and clear, and it's your return on equity is like nothing at that point, because it's not it's already peaked at what it's going to peak, market rate. In Pittsburgh, we don't appreciate hardly anything. Our year on year is like 3% or something like that on a regular year.
Pittsburgh was like the #1 market for appreciation. I don't know. I think it was 2024, maybe 2023. I think it was 2023, and it appreciated 20%.
We had like a wave of people coming into this affordability, and then we seen like, so your standard, like your 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that's on a nice lot in a good school district, that was just like skyrocket. That was like relatively updated. Like that was,
Who's the most important team member, you think, for you? Is it a GC? Is it a property manager? What's like the most important team member on your team? I know it's a tough question, sorry.
I guess, obviously my wife, because I wasn't for her.
Good answer. Good answer. Number one answer on the board. My wife. And what is she doing? What is your wife doing in your business?
All the back end, like the admin type stuff that really it's hard for me to do. Like I'm more the visionary type, and she put all the pieces in order behind me, kind of thing, pay all the bills, keep track of different things, do the accounting, that kind of stuff. So really, she's like the organization to my chaos. On the field side of things, it would be just different subcontractors that are responsible enough to work on their own and see a project through from beginning to end, and also have the wherewithal to bring stuff up. We weeded out a bunch of contractors that they're getting paid to do this, but if they see this, this, and this, well, like that, we're not there for that or whatever. You know what I mean? To see the whole project through, and that way we can give them a lot of volume of work. It's like guys that can work on their own, I guess. Yeah.
I love everything you said there. Your wife's back end stuff. I think you're talking about like somebody that has a complementary skill set.
Yes.
You're a visionary. She's got a complementary skill set. So find somebody that's going to plug your weaknesses.
Yes.
And then for the subcontractors, and I 100% agree with you. I love that you said this. I do not like working with contractors, and I think you should realize this. Sometimes it's hard to realize it. When you work with contractors, they know that maybe there's another issue, but they just fix whatever they're working on, even though they could just go, hey, this and that are also
this
wrong.
Needs done. You want me to do this while I'm here.
You were saying that it's a really great skill. I think that if you have A-player contractors on your projects, it 100% makes your properties better.
Yes.
It 100% lowers your maintenance calls. It 100% makes your tenant satisfaction go through the roof, because they're like, hey, Joe came over here. I love Joe. I love that you sent him over.
He came over to fix the toilet, but he also fixed the door and the window while he was here. Great. Yeah.
And I'm sure you're not saying we're not saying don't compensate your contractors. We're saying make sure you identify these people and hold on to them. Make sure they know hey, I want you to tell me when there's issues. I want to pay you for those.
Yeah, what you want is the ones that they think like an owner. They think they see the big picture. They see this picture. They see this house when it's completed. You know what I mean? I'll have guys that come to me and be like, okay, what's your price point on this house? Okay, then you should probably go with this finish and this finish and this finish, that kind of thing. Like they're thinking total picture, thinking like an owner.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm glad you shared that. Is there any tools, tech systems that you've used to help you scale? Maybe that's platforms that you use like Appfolio or Buildium or QuickBooks, anything that comes to mind?
Early on, we got on with Stessa, and we still use them today. It was free then. I think it still is, and they have a paid version.
Stessa or Stress? Is it Stessa? Stessa?
Yeah. And then recently, the last year or two, it's been Rent Ready. We're on board with them.
What's Stessa? Is Stessa basically QuickBooks?
Yeah, Stessa is QuickBooks tailored to real estate investing.
Okay.
And they now have we don't use it, but they now have ability. Well, it's QuickBooks to where you can link it to your bank account, so you can automatically log, track expenses, keep your data and do your taxes, pull. It's QuickBooks realistically, but it's already kind of templated to real estate.
Yeah, no, I gotcha.
Yeah, and then Rent Ready is a collection software you can also manage on there.
That's what you do. That's where that's your tenant portal where like tenants pay.
Now for advertising, we've been using Turbo Tenant.
Turbo Tenant.
Yeah. So
what's that? I don't know.
That is like apartments.com. Almost exactly like apartments.com. You can do some management tools on there, but when you list on Turbo Tenant, it's free for the owner to list. It'll put you on Zillow, Realtor, apartments.com, Redfin. It'll put you on all those big sites.
It does.
Yeah. And then typically we'll do that. And it'll also put you on Facebook Marketplace, but we'll also list individually on Facebook Marketplace. Just because it rates you higher. Yeah, it rates you higher as a person instead of a company on Facebook.
Gotcha. Yeah. Did Zillow stop charging? I should know this. They were charging for rental listings for a while.
We don't have direct rental listings through Zillow. It's through Turbo Tenant, and it's free.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, that could be. I mean, you've actually given out a lot of gold nuggets. So
yeah, so apartments.com is the same thing. You can list through apartments.com for free. Now, where they get their money is apartments.com and Turbo Tenant. When the tenant comes in to apply, they charge them a fee. It's like a $50 fee that the tenant pays to apartments.com or to Turbo Tenant. That's what they're
to fill out like an application and that.
Yes, and then I'm getting the application, so they're collecting that fee. I don't get any of that fee money.
Gotcha.
But when they fill out these applications, we get them in real time. We've had people fill them out right out of showing, and they pop right up. So
yeah. When I say that, when I ask the question like, what tools or tech help you scale, it is one of those ones that you mentioned. Like you're like, this one's like rock star. Like I love it.
Probably Stessa. That's been the easiest one to really grow with. It was plug and play. I didn't really have to build it out, or that was an easy one from the beginning.
Yeah, love that. Appreciate the share.
For bookkeeping. Because if I had to build the back end system myself, I'm not super organized to where I would have built it out that way. And with that one, it's just like, okay, what's this expense? This can go in this. This can go in this. And at the end of the year, it's real easy. Like you tab this to CapEx. You did this in repairs and maintenance. This is what you caught in rents. This is insurance. This is that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I feel like I looked at it a long time ago. I mean, I used QuickBooks Online, been super happy with it. But there's definitely
QuickBooks. Overall, QuickBooks is probably a little more advanced than that because you can do more things on QuickBooks.
Yeah, I mean, you can use different platforms too. Like I could use our Buildium platform to do accounting, but I just don't like it. I feel like it's like a C-class accounting software, and people are like, "Well, you're paying for multiple things." And
right?
So
and I'm skeptical getting married into a online platform because you get really weaved in with these ones, and they consistently up the prices, and it's like, and to part ways, you really gotta you're embedded in using them, and you really gotta change gears. It takes a lot of work to where you're using one platform and move to another.
Yeah, no, I agree. Is there any local like REIA groups in Pittsburgh or Westmoreland around where you are that you're like, hey, this group is like rock star?
Mm-hmm.
Like you got to be part of this to get like wholesale deals. Is there anything that you can plug?
So there's Acre of Pittsburgh is like the big one around here. That's kind of far from me.
Acre of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that would be our local REIA. It's about an hour drive, so I don't get to the meetings on there. I do follow what they're doing online. Yeah, I'll go to, every once in a while they'll have a speaker that I want to go see. We'll go to that. And then New Western, they have like different events. Some of the bigger companies downtown, they have some events I'll go to. But the one I go to religiously here would be SWIG. It's Southwestern Investor Group. And
is that like a Facebook group?
Yeah, Facebook, and we meet at a local restaurant once a month, and we have a speaker, we have networking, lots of people that you're going to deal with. You'll see inspectors and contractors and agents, and you'll meet them too, because we're a big county land-wise, but we're not people-wise. So you'll see these faces again when you're doing business in the local market.
I mean, it's super important for also investors to realize that if you're investing like heavily in one market and you're scaling a portfolio, you're going to run across this, just like you said, the same people. And you have to be like high integrity all the time. Or
it's a blessing and a curse. Yeah.
You'll develop the reputation of like a bad wholesaler or this. And then it's just the circle is so small. Maybe I could be wrong, but it's very similar in Baltimore.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you're running across the same people and the same group of people. And it's like most people talk and like, oh yeah, I've dealt with that person. He's a great, he's a great buyer, or that person backed out of a deal and he's miserable and he made it really tough for me. That's
we have one of our subs on one of our projects who's out there actually today. He gave a reference to a guy from the group that I know. I called him up. I'm like, hey, you've used this sub before? He's like, yeah, he was a great guy. No problems, whatever. Hired. It was just that easy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Referrals are almost the best thing you can possibly
100%.
get.
Yeah, 100%. And it works. I mean, you could be the bad way too. If you're a bad egg in a local market, small, we all know each other. We're going to talk, and it can work against you too if you're not doing what you should be.
Yeah. Before we wrap up here, if you were a new investor coming into, let's say, Westmoreland or Pittsburgh, is there somebody that you'd recommend, hey, reach out to Travis? Is there anybody else that you'd be like, hey, you should know this person if you're investing in or around Pittsburgh?
I would say more groups, I would say, than individual people. I'd definitely say get in the local REIA group, the local one in your area, and just go meet a bunch of people and kind of get your finger on the pulse of what's happening, where are the next hot areas, where people have had success, where people have had failure. Go network as much as possible, really. Okay. And get, collect as many cards, be, cheerful, helpful, that kind of thing. Just soak it all in, and, you'll find opportunity in approximation through that.
If you're a new investor, who do you think that investor should try to meet first? If they're going to meet, sometimes these meetings are overwhelming. There's a decent amount of people.
Yeah.
If they're going with one goal in mind, would you recommend make sure you meet a Rockstar agent? Would it be make sure you meet a Rockstar property manager, contractor?
I guess it would be if you're trying to be an investor, just meet an investor, someone who's who's already doing what you want to do. I mean, I always tell this to people that I help. It's in your area, there's probably already someone doing what you want to do. Take that guy to lunch, do whatever, you know what I mean? Wash his car for him, ask him how he did it, because he's going to know all the same people on that rung of the ladder to get to where you need to go. So definitely, if you want to be a landlord, find the landlords.
No, I love that advice, and I mentioned it in your intro. You do partner with investors. You do partner on purchasing properties, managing properties. So if an investor is interested in Pittsburgh, how do they reach out to you, Travis?
Yeah, just reach out to me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, Travis Sterner on Instagram, Travis_cashflow cowboy. And we partner with people on JV deals. So just straight private lending. So it's the easiest way to really get a front row seat to what we're doing. Just come in on one of our deals. We have a pretty low barrier to entry on, when we're raising capital for deals. And you'll be, you're almost getting paid to learn, because you're getting a return on the money you're putting into the deal, and you're also getting to see this market and how we're doing everything. And it's a real easy way to piggyback and see and to learn firsthand.
Nice. No, I love that. I'll put all of your contact information in the description of the video. Last question for you. What does the future of real estate look like for you?
For us, so we really want to get to it's between 100 to 200 unit portfolio here pretty soon, but we also want to have a constant flip machine, so there's new money coming in the door, and that's the foreseeable future. That's kind of the vivid vision for the next step. I mean, really having, I'd say, a 5 to 10 person team, and just kind of reevaluating once we get there. Still staying in our county, still growing in our areas, and just doing bigger and better deals in the markets we already have.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned Vivid Vision. Is that the book Vivid Vision? Do you use that?
I love that book. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if I've read that.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. I mean, it's a goal setting book, right?
It is. Yeah, it is. It's kind of setting the ideal and then working backwards. And his idea, the whole premise of the book is plan 3 years ahead, see what you want, set that vision, and then kind of reverse engineer what you're doing now to get there.
Does it have dreamlining in it? Is that what it is? Or is that a different one?
That's a different one, but almost your vision board kind of thing. Yeah.
Cool. No, well, I appreciate you sharing your time with us. I appreciate you sharing your expertise, your knowledge. There's actually tons of gold nuggets in here for any new investor, or even a seasoned investor, 3, 5, 7 properties that's looking to invest in Pittsburgh, maybe for the first time. But I definitely recommend reaching out to Travis.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, brother. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. We'll see you guys.